Jabs or no jobs, COVID vaccines to be compulsory for NHS workers. Following the same rules in the care sector, those coming into contact with patients will have to be double jabbed by the spring.
The government needs to help them manage the risk of losing staff, because there's just as big a patient safety and quality of care risk if we lose their staff.
Also this lunchtime, he was out to play. The mother of a 10-year-old killed in a dog attack pays tribute to her sweet boy. Working from home in the Caribbean, the government defends Sir Geoffrey Cox, who worked abroad during lockdown. Switched before birth, an American woman sues after an IVF mix-up meant she was pregnant with the wrong baby. And Marcus Rashford, MBE, the campaigning footballer, is honoured at Windsor Castle.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain.
Good afternoon. NHS workers in England will join their social care colleagues in being told they must be double jabbed or lose their jobs. The Health Secretary is expected to confirm the move in the next half an hour. It won't come in until the new year to give people time to get 2 doses of a COVID vaccine. It's aimed at those working with patients to protect them after new figures show thousands of people died after contracting COVID in hospital. But there are concerns it could lead to more staffing shortages in the NHS. With the details, here's our political reporter, Shihab Khan.
It is NHS staff up and down the country who have been at the forefront of the battle against COVID-19. They were offered vaccines before us all, but not everyone took the opportunity to take one. The government is expected to announce that it will now be compulsory for all frontline NHS staff in England to have both jabs. And today at the COP26 summit, the government's chief scientific advisor was keen to stress the importance of being vaccinated.
What we know is that vaccination reduces serious illness, very good at reducing serious illness, very good at reducing death, and reduces the ability for the virus to transmit. It doesn't eliminate it, but reduces it. More people that are vaccinated, the better that effect is. And so my message to everybody is get vaccinated.
So far, 89% of NHS healthcare workers in England have had both doses of the vaccine, but around 110,000 members of staff remain unvaccinated. With the NHS saying it's short of staff by around 90 to 100,000 people, this move could mean it loses many more.
Trust leaders on the ground absolutely can see the logic as to why it's important for frontline staff to be vaccinated, but they're very, very insistent the government needs to help them manage the risk of losing staff, because there's just as big a patient safety and quality of care risk if we lose their staff.
Labour this morning were wary of those concerns and want the government to instead work on encouraging NHS staff to get a jab.
Coercion could lead to a further loss of staff when we've already got record level waiting lists that would get worse without those employees. It's far better to sit down and talk to the staff and persuade them to get the jab rather than coerce them in a way that might make them leave their jobs.
Just relax your arm for me.
The announcement is expected to come imminently, and getting the balance right between increasing uptake while keeping NHS staff in work will be key to ensuring the success of this policy. Shihab Khan, ITV News, Westminster.
Perfect.
Our health editor, Emily Morgan, joins me now. A long-awaited decision on this, but not, as we've been hearing, without some potential problems.
No, not without problems at all. I think the government will have some real pushback from NHS staff today, particularly, obviously, those who don't want to be forced to be vaccinated, but also from the unions who feel that this is not the right way to go about things, that it's a really heavy-handed approach. But Sajid Javid has never made any secret of the fact that he wants NHS staff to be vaccinated in a compulsory way. He's talked really tough on social care workers who have until Thursday to be fully vaccinated, and he's made his opinions really well known on that. So ministers, I think, will be looking really carefully at the social care sector to see what sort of impact making vaccines compulsory in that sector will have on staff. I know that the Department of Health is monitoring staff numbers really carefully. It looks as if maybe tens of thousands of social care workers will leave the sector, maybe up to 60,000. So the NHS could be in precisely the same position come April. And it's one of the reasons the deadline will be pushed to April to ensure that the NHS doesn't lose staff over winter when they're under the greatest pressure. Now, the government will have looked at all this, but decided that the risk to patients far outweighs the risk to losing staff in the NHS.
Emily Morgan, thank you. Police in Wales have named a 10-year-old boy who was killed in a dog attack. Jack Liss died yesterday afternoon at a house near Caerphilly. He wasn't at home at the time. Jack's mother said he was out to play, as she described losing her sweet and beautiful boy. Our Wales correspondent Rupert Evelyn joins me now. A terrible loss for the family and the community there.
Absolutely tragic, traumatising, desperately sad for all those who are connected in whatever way to what happened here yesterday afternoon. It transpires that Jack Liss was visiting a friend's house after school. It's thought that he was attacked by this dog soon after he entered the house here. And the dog itself locked on to Jack, and despite some fairly frantic efforts from Jack's friend, and who went to various neighbours to try and call for help, there was really nothing that was able to prevent this dog from attacking him. The police were obviously called. They have shot and put down the dog, and today Jack's mother, Emma Whitfield, said in a Facebook post, "It's with so much heartbreak and before close friends and family to see his name in the news today. I have to announce that our beautiful boy Jack was taken so tragically yesterday. It was not our dog, and nor did it happen at our family home. He was, as Emma Whitfield said, simply out to play."
Rupert Evelyn, thank you. A man rescued after spending 53 hours injured in a cave in South Wales is recovering in hospital. He was brought to the surface last night after a mammoth effort by rescuers in the Brecon Beacons. Our correspondent Ben Chapman has been inside the caves this morning and joins me now. This really was an incredible rescue effort by so many people, wasn't it?
Yes, and it was quite a moment last night when those 300 or so rescuers trooped back down here, having succeeded in freeing this injured caver from the cave where he'd spent 2 days and 2 nights. They've released some pictures which really illustrate, I think, just how difficult it was to bring him through the narrow, twisting tunnels on a stretcher and finally out of the cave. It is believed to be a new record for the longest stretcher carry during a British cave rescue. Now, I've been inside the cave today, following some of those rescue workers as they go back underground to retrieve some of the kit that was left behind. And even just inside the entrance, you get a sense of just how cold, how cramped, how dark the conditions are that injured caver endured for so many hours, as of course did the teams who went in to help him.
Everybody in the team, me included, see it as a phenomenal success, quite exceptional. In the sense not of the outcome, there are often very positive outcomes, but just the sheer amount of effort and the number of teams involved and the way they work seamlessly make it a unique event.
Well, we don't know much more today about the injured caver or his condition. He was taken to hospital from here last night. His injuries are multiple, but they're not life-threatening, and he was said to be in good spirits.
Ben Chapman, thank you. The Deputy Prime Minister has defended the former Attorney General Sir Geoffrey Cox after it emerged he'd worked in the Caribbean during lockdown. Sir Geoffrey, an MP in Devon, was reportedly in the British Virgin Islands in April, earning thousands of pounds advising the island's government. Dominic Raab said it is for voters to decide whether they feel Sir Geoffrey is dedicating enough time to being an MP, but what he'd done was legitimate. Labour has now called for an urgent investigation. Our political editor Robert Peston is in Westminster. Another day of potentially damaging headlines for the government.
Well, as you say, the disclosure overnight in the Daily Mail that Sir Geoffrey Cox, a very prominent lawyer, former Attorney General, £900,000 or thereabouts over the past year. Now, some people will be cross, upset that a good chunk of that money came from advising a tax haven, the government of a tax haven, the British Virgin Islands, in a corruption case brought against it, believe it or not, by the British government. Some will say, did he get that job by dint of having previously been Attorney General? But actually, the Prime Minister has sort of made it known today through his official spokesman that for him, the issue is whether Geoffrey Cox is spending enough time doing, frankly, what all of us think of as his day job, being an MP. And his spokesman said the Prime Minister believes being an MP should be their primary job and the MP should be visible to their constituents. Now, the joke among Tory MPs when Geoffrey Cox hasn't been particularly visible here, he's been out earning money for donkey's years, is that the Chief Whip could never afford to, seems to be saying today, this is quite difficult for Geoffrey Cox, is choose between your outside interests or being an MP. You can't do both. Give up the money or give up being an MP.
Robert Peston, thank you. Next, how two women gave birth to the wrong babies after an IVF mix-up. It happened in America. The women were implanted with each other's embryos. After a DNA test, the babies were eventually returned to the right families. But one of the couples is now suing the fertility clinic where it happened. Sally Biddulph has the story.
The moment Alexander Cardinale met his biological daughter for the first time when she was 4 months old.
Losing the birth child that you know for the genetic child that you don't even know yet. It's a truly impossible nightmare.
His wife, Daphne, had given birth to another baby girl after IVF treatment, but their embryo had been confused with another couple's at the fertility clinic, and each mother was given the other's embryo, giving birth to each other's biological child.
Our memories of childbirth will always be tainted by the sick reality that our biological child was given to someone else, and the baby that I fought to bring into this world was not mine.
Soon after birth, the couple was struck by how the baby did not look like them or their older daughter. A genetic test confirmed their doubts.
Constantly fighting, nagging questions, and pushing down dark thoughts of doubt. It was truly my hell.
The babies, who were born a week apart, have now been swapped, and both girls are with their biological parents. But the trauma of what happened remains raw.
Instead of breastfeeding my own child, I breastfed and bonded with a child I was later forced to give away.
The other family want to remain anonymous, but the Cardinales are suing the LA fertility centre that treated them, a clinic that has so far not responded to media requests for comment. Sally Biddulph, ITV News.
Still to come.
I have to be honest, I didn't know who Mark was at the time. But
is Mike offended?
Oscar-winning Mark Rylance on not being the star of the show. But first, have you or someone you know experienced racism in cricket? Discrimination in the game was highlighted, of course, by what Azim Rafiq experienced when he played at Yorkshire Cricket Club. While the fallout from the club's response to that continues, anyone at any level in cricket is now being urged to report what they have endured to the Independent Commission for Equity in Cricket. Its chair, Cindy Butts, joins me now. Welcome. It feels like it could be a watershed moment for cricket, but it might be hard for some people to come forward. What would you say to them today?
Oh, I think it is a watershed moment. It's a time of reckoning for cricket, and it's a real opportunity to have lasting change. I am encouraging everyone who has experiences of discrimination, be that race, sexism, misogyny, elitism, whatever it might be. I'm encouraging people to come forward, whether you are a coach, a former coach, a player, someone on the talent pathway. We want you to come forward and give us your stories.
Can you promise a 10-year-old budding cricketer who might be listening to this or learns about it, who isn't white, that they won't be treated like this if they continue in the sport? Or, as you say, it might be to do with gender as well as race?
I couldn't say that, but what I can say is that we're encouraging people to come forward, to give their experiences, and the whole aim of this is to get to a point where we're able to hold a mirror up to cricket and say, this is what you look like, warts and all, and that we can arrive at solutions that will make a difference to cricket going forward.
Sorry to interrupt you, Azim Rafiq, that's what he did. He said what he'd experienced, and then it wasn't really acknowledged by Yorkshire Cricket Club, hence the fallout, hence the resignations. Will this way of doing things, will people be listened to?
Oh, they absolutely will be. We are absolutely independent. We are independent of the ECB and any other organisation. So we have the ability to say what we want and to make recommendations that where we think the evidence merits it. What I would say to people is if they want to come forward anonymously, confidentially, they are able to do that, and we can give them absolute confidence that we will not identify them in our final report. We really need people to come forward with their experiences. And dare I say it, positive experiences too, or experiences where best practice exists and we can share that. We want to hear that too. So if you have an experience that you'd like to share with us, please contact the icec.com and you can find our survey online, fill it out, and it will make a difference.
Cindy Bartz, thank you very much. Thank you. The Queen has returned to Windsor after a long-planned weekend at Sandringham. She last carried out a public engagement in October. Since then, she's carried out only light duties after advice from doctors to rest. The government's chief scientific advisor has warned climate change is a bigger threat to our lives than COVID. Speaking at the climate talks in Glasgow, Sir Patrick Vallance said if things continue as they are, more people will die from climate change than COVID. And thousands of handmade poppies first seen at the Tower of London have found a new home at the Imperial War Museum in Manchester. The permanent installation is made up of 800,000 flowers. He's already an England footballer and high-profile campaigner. Now Marcus Rashford has an MBE. The 24-year-old was awarded with the honour for his campaign to support vulnerable children during the pandemic. It resulted in the government changing its policy over free school meals. He spoke to our reporter Chloe Keedy.
Well, Marcus Rashford has waited a long time for this moment. He was awarded this honour just over a year ago, and it's likely that this ceremony would have been much sooner had it not been for COVID. He was given his MBE this morning by Prince William, who actually tweeted today to say how happy he was to be back doing in-person investitures for the first time since before the pandemic. Marcus Rashford has been given this award for services to vulnerable children during COVID-19 and for his campaign last summer to ensure that no child in need went hungry, which resulted in the government changing its policy over free school meals vouchers during lockdown. Well, I asked him what it meant to him to be here today, and he said it was a very proud moment.
Just giving me support really for what I've been doing, and I appreciate it coming from him. It's not the first time I've actually met him. I met him a few times and had a few conversations with him, and he's a really good person, so it was nice that I was able to receive the honour from him today.
While Marcus Rashford was here today with his mum Melanie, he's actually dedicated his award to her, and he told me a little bit about what it meant to her to be here today.
She's a single parent throughout the whole way of that, so however bad it is for us, it's 10 times worse for her. So any awards that I've got really from the charitable things that I've been doing, including this one, they're all in her house, and this one will go in her house as well.
Well, it's almost hard to believe that Marcus Rashford is only 24, and this is yet another thing that he can now add to his very long list of achievements.
Isn't it just? Chloe Keedy in Windsor. Finally, the new production of Romeo and Juliet with a modern twist. The star-crossed lovers have swapped roles. Rhyming couplets are replaced with street slang. And Fair Verona is instead present-day London with issues of racial inequality and the pandemic. Supporting the young performers is the star actor Mark Rylance. Faye Barker spoke to him ahead of opening night.
How? Chop logic. What is this?
It's Shakespeare, but not as you may know it. The classic made contemporary. And watching and supporting this reworked Juliet and Romeo is veteran of stage and screen Mark Rylance.
We have to make the audience as if there are other people sitting around or friends or...
Artistic director Darren Raymond first met Mark 15 years ago.
I have to be honest, I didn't know who Mark was at the time.
I was mightily offended.
But they have proved to be an inspiration to one another as the bard is brought boldly into the 21st century.
It's a real kind of mashup of, classical and contemporary. It's what Shakespeare should be. I think if he was alive today, he would be messing around with stories like that and really reflecting nature as it is today.
Suddenly a soul will be born, a soul like Darren's, that just has such an instinctive grasp of what Shakespeare's on about. And so we have to make sure that access is there for people not to be limited by a prejudice, even if it's a prejudice in their own mind.
Have you represented many accused spies?
Mark Rylance has won multiple awards, including an Oscar for his role in Steven Spielberg's Bridge of Spies. But he says the accolades are irrelevant to these stars of tomorrow.
I don't think those titles, those awards and things mean much. I think they at first think, oh, this is another white man trying to do good, trying to polish his halo. And I think I have to win their trust, that I am honest with them and I'm here because I enjoy what they're doing.
He's like an established actor, so it's like nice to have that presence in the room. Like he's done it and he makes us know that if he does it, we can do it.
If someone said, Tanner, you're going to be doing Shakespeare, I'm going to like, bro, shut up. I never imagined myself doing it. So now I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow. I'm here, so it's great, man.
Juliet! Wherefore art thou Juliet?
A fresh take, allowing new stars to be born.
I had to see you.
Faye Barker, ITV News in West London.
That's all we've got time for. So far today, Mary's here with the latest at 6:30 from everyone on today's Lunchtime team. Bye-bye.